Here are some key terms you should know before we go more in depth about the topic. Trade-off. Every option available that one cannot do at the same time. Opportunity cost. The next best thing. Production possibilities frontier, also known as a PPF. A curve showing the maximum attainable combination of two products that may be produced with available resources. Comparative advantage. The ability of an individual firm or country to produce a good or service using the same resources. Absolute advantage. The ability of an individual firm or country to produce more of a good or service using the same resources. Trade. The act of buying and selling. Terms of trade. The ratio which a country can trade its exports for imports. Circular flow diagram. A model that illustrates how participants in the markets are linked. Market. A group of buyers and sellers in the institution in which they trade. Product markets. Market for goods and services. Factor markets. Markets for the factors of production.
PPF. It is possible to reach points that are unattainable. Increase in productivity, trading, increase in resource, and decrease in input cost. As you can see here by this graph, the blue is attainable but inefficient. The red, however, is attainable. And the black line is attainable and efficient. The production possibilities frontier, also known as the PPF, shows the maximum attainable combinations of two products that may be produced with available resources and current technology. Well, I bet you're asking yourself, how can the PPF shift? Well, increase in available labor force and capital stock shifts the PPF outward, increasing marginal opportunity, technological advances, and these shifts represent economic growth. As you can see here, we're comparing grain and wine. The green arrow shows the shift from grain to wine using technological advances, which is how we can extend our PPF outward.
Scarcity is the basis upon which economics is founded. It is the result of unlimited wants conflicting with the limited available resources. For example, China controls 95% of the rare earth deposits currently found on Earth. Rare earth has been utilized by scientists to create technological advancements, such as fiber optics and infrared lenses. Scarcity influences the prices and the amount produced of any product. The opportunity cost refers to the highest valued alternative that must be given up in order to engage in an activity. For example, a potential opportunity cost of purchasing textbooks for school is being able to eat food for the week. Scarcity affects our everyday decisions as consumers. Scarcity also affects the producers. With limited resources available, which companies should be providing the goods and services? Let's take a look at absolute advantage. Absolute advantage is the ability to produce more of a good or service than a competitor with the same available resources. For example, if Colombia can produce 200 tons of cocaine and Canada can produce 50 tons of cocaine, Colombia has the absolute advantage in producing the good because they can produce more than Canada. However, just because someone can produce more of a good doesn't mean that they should. In order to understand why, let's look at the concept of comparative advantage. Comparative advantage is the ability to produce a good or service with a lower opportunity cost, given that they are doing so with the same available resources. Let's assume that Canada can produce 150 tons of maple syrup, while Colombia can only produce 20 tons of maple syrup. In this table, you can see that Canada and Colombia produce cocaine and maple syrup. We see that obviously Colombia has the absolute advantage in producing both cocaine and maple syrup. However, if you look at the opportunity cost of producing those goods for each country, we can see who has the comparative advantage. As you can see, Canada has the comparative advantage in producing cocaine, and Colombia has the comparative advantage in producing maple syrup. Therefore, Canada should specialize in producing cocaine, and Colombia should specialize in producing maple syrup.
Two companies, Nike and Hurley, two goods, sandals and shoes. If Nike uses all their resources, they'll be making 16 shoes a week. If Hurley uses all their resources, they'll be making 15 shoes a week. If Nike uses all their resources, they'll be making 16 sandals a week. If Hurley uses all their resources, they'll be making 30 sandals a week, and there's no specialization. The two graphs on the right-hand side show each company and how much they'll be able to make if they use all their resources. If Hurley decides to use all their resources, they can make 30 sandals. If they decide to use all their resources, they can make 15 shoes. If Nike decides to use all their resources, they can make 16 sandals. If Nike decides to use all their resources, they can make 16 shoes. If Hurley decided to make 20 sandals, they'll only be able to make 10 shoes. If Nike decided to make 2 sandals, they could only make 14 shoes. The chart on the bottom left shows what each company has to give up if they choose to make one or the other product. So if Nike decides to make one shoe, they have to give up one sandal. If Nike decides to make one sandal, they have to give up one shoe. For Hurley, every shoe they decide to make, they have to give up 2 sandals. And for every sandal they make, they have to give up half a shoe. With this chart, Hurley would show that they have the comparative advantage over sandals, and Nike would have the comparative advantage over shoes. With this chart, you would have 5 rows: production/consumption without trade, production with trade, trade, consumption with trade, and gain from trade. Nike sandals, production and consumption with trade, they would have 8 for sandals and 8 for shoes. Then their production with trade for sandals would be 0 and 16 for shoes, since they have the comparative advantage. For Hurley, the production consumption without trade would be 16 for sandals and 7 for shoes. And then with production with trade, Hurley would have 30 sandals, since they have the comparative advantage. Then they would have 0 for shoes. For trade, Hurley wouldn't want to give more than 14 sandals, so they traded 11 sandals to Nike. Nike wouldn't want to give Hurley more than 8 shoes, so they traded them 7.5 shoes. That with compensation with trade, Nike would have 11 sandals, Nike would have 8.5 shoes, Hurley would have 19 sandals, and then Hurley would also have 7.5 shoes. Nike would gain 3 sandals, Nike shoes would gain 0.5, Hurley's sandals would gain 3, Hurley's shoes would gain 0.5 shoes.
Alright guys, we're going to do economics in a whole new way this time around. This time around, we're going to do it my way. And my way is auto-tuned. Check it. My neighbors are producing cherries. I keep it swag by producing berries. Keep with LD as my flow varies, cause this is gonna get a little hairy. Opportunity cost.
Opportunity cost, the next best thing that's given up for something else.
This little guy keeps popping up. Opportunity cost is the cost of opportunity, while trade-offs can increase our ingenuities. Let's describe the opportunity cost. Please stay with me and don't get lost.
You don't know what you're talking about. Let the pro take over. If you take a look at the opportunity cost, it is evident that in order for you to produce 1 pound of cherries, you need to give up producing 1 pound of berries. In order for your neighbor to produce 2 pounds of cherries, he needs to give up half a pound of berries. With the opportunity cost calculated, you can now see who has the clear comparative advantage and who has the clear absolute advantage.
Now that our opportunity cost is done, our talk on comparative advantage just begun. Absolute advantage produces more of a good than its competition. Comparative advantage produces its goods more efficient. Get out of my face!
Whoa, my topic, my turf. You have the comparative advantage in picking berries. However, your neighbor has the comparative advantage in picking cherries. Your neighbor also has the absolute advantage in producing both berries and cherries. Simply put, you need to trade.
The comparative advantage has a lower opportunity cost. So less is more and none is lost. PPF is crucial.
Production Possibilities Frontier, or PPF. A curve showing the maximum attainable combination of two products that may be produced with available resources.
I don't care about vocab.
Like I was saying, PPF is crucial when producing two goods. It shows what can't be made and what should.
I told you once, but I'm nice, so I'm going to tell you again. This is your PPF. You can produce 20 pounds of berries and 20 pounds of cherries, while your neighbor, on the other hand, can produce 30 pounds of berries and 60 pounds of cherries. As you can see here, your neighbor gives up a whole bunch of berries to produce cherries. But while your PPF, you give up just a little bit of berries to produce cherries. So therefore, you have the comparative advantage when you produce these berries.
Economics be my thuggish way. Just keep at the margin every day. Just a little hustler making his way. Every day ought to be tyranny day.